joined now by Socialist author Grace Blakeley and Conservative writer Esther Krakue. Well, welcome to you, ladies. I just look at that picture, Grace, and whether you support him or not, a lot of people who have done are feeling it tonight. They're beginning to move their position because it's so damning. It's clearly a party. It's a leaving party for his former spin doctor, Lee Cain. You can see there's a lot more than two people there. The Prime Minister's a drink in his hand. There's bottles all over the table, food all over the table. That is a party. And just to remind everybody, this was a time when people couldn't go to funerals. They couldn't go and see loved ones in hospital. People were dying on their own because of the rules set by that man who's having a party. He then told Parliament never happened.
To answer Louise's question, which is why would he do this if it was going to be so, career-destroying for him, it is simply because he does not believe that the rules apply to him. As you said, he's been removed from many jobs before. He's been accused of lying. He's been accused of lying on, multiple different occasions. Because as someone who was raised in the way in which he was raised, accustomed to being able to move around society, to move around, various different high political institutions, senior posts, without ever having anyone question his right to be there, he believes he deserves to be Prime Minister. He believes he deserves to make the rules, to control the country, to set the rules for everyone else, but that those rules simply don't apply to him.
Tough question for you, given your political allegiance, but there's a picture of Kier Starmer, who's the head of the Labour Party, and he's been under investigation for what appears to be a not dissimilar situation where he's having drinks for some of his staff. We know about this. Now, my question about this is that despite all his denials, Kier Starmer was very, very, very clear that from the moment Boris Johnson was investigated by the police, Kier Starmer said he should have stood down. Why has the same rule not applied to Kier Starmer now that he is being investigated by the police?
Well, Piers, you know my political allegiances, and you know that I'm not the biggest fan of Kier Starmer. And I think, to be honest...
You're Labour.
I am Labour, but I think
he's
hoisted himself by his own petard in this situation because he has sought to present himself to the country as, this very righteous lawyer type who is going to go in and kind of, make sure that the political class all obeys the rules and believes that kind of presenting himself as this stand-up character is what's going to win the electorate over. Now, not only has that not worked because he hasn't presented a compelling message as to how he needs to change the country, he's obviously ended up in this basically one-sided suicide pact where he said to Boris Johnson, you need to step down and I'll step down if I'm found to have broken the rules. So, yes, Kier Starmer's also messed this up. We're suffering from a really severe dearth of political leadership in this country at a time when people are literally unable to feed
I totally agree.
Families.
This is a crucial time for the country, and this is why this is also distracting, but also important. It's about trust. Esther, can you put out any defence for this? You're a Conservative.
Absolutely. And I voted for Boris. But I've also been, I think, in a country that, actually, if you want to see your country progress, you should be very open about criticising people, regardless of whether you're politically left or right. I don't think, obviously, Kier Starmer and this Beergate is justifiable, but I think it's the same thing for Boris. I think what's worse for Boris is it's clear, one, he lied, but also he didn't know the rules that he set for himself, right, or for the rest of the country. And I think that's what's more damning, because I don't think he had any compassion when he actually looked at what he put the country through in terms of telling people not to be able to go to funerals, people not being able to see loved ones.
So should he resign after this? If the rest of the report, when it comes out, the Sugre report, and I think it's very murky, they had this meeting and he's been lying about even having the meeting and whose idea it was. But if the report has a load more pictures like this, and Boris Johnson's involved in loads of these things, should he just resign?
On principle, he should resign, but he won't, right? And I think also there should be...
Should Conservative MPs have a higher moral bar than they're currently showing?
All MPs should, including Labour MPs. I think what I'm seeing here is a huge lack of humility in our politics. It's OK to say we got it wrong. This COVID thing happened, everyone was scrambling for a solution. We clearly couldn't follow the rules that we set for you, so we don't blame you for not being able to follow those rules because we didn't follow them ourselves.
It's not just about morality, though. It's also about accountability. And this is actually a problem that goes to the heart of our politics. We have this idea of parliamentary sovereignty, and it's very difficult to really hold senior politicians to account for anything. Historically, if this had happened to anyone else, they would have stepped down because there was a basic sense of kind of, honour.
It's really down to 56 Tory MPs to decide if this reaches their moral bar.
And they know that. And you know what they know? They know that they don't have anyone else. So
quick question before we let you...
Which is embarrassing, right?
It is embarrassing. We can all agree on that, I think. I want to just quickly ask you about wolf whistling. Very interesting piece in the Times today by a female columnist, Claire Foges, in which she talks about...
I presume that's for you.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you. I actually did get a wolf whistle the other day in the street. I was actually flattered, but that's, it's different for me. People won't believe me, but it happened. A woman actually almost crumbled, but it was. But let me ask you about wolf whistling, because the argument she put up was we shouldn't be criminalising wolf whistling, which is what is at the moment going through as a potential new legal bill, is that we should make it illegal to wolf whistle because it would be harassing women in public. Do you agree with it?
Surprisingly enough, Piers, I don't, because I don't think we should be criminalising, much more stuff at all. In fact, I think we criminalise far too much stuff. And actually, if you look at the way that this is enforced, we know that the Metropolitan Police has a problem with institutional racism. How is this going to get enforced? We see this historically. These rules, particularly around women, are generally enforced on certain populations when they're directed to certain populations. I can imagine this ending up being something like, why does stop and search happen? It's when the police smell weed and it's used as a way to criminalise black people. The same thing could happen here with, ethnic minorities wolf whistling towards white women and them being
or even Esther.
Not white.
I mean, I don't know if you get wolf whistled much or not.
I've never been. It might be.
Really?
Yeah, it would be nice to be wolf whistled at. But the thing is, one, this is unenforceable. But two, will women be prosecuted for wolf whistling at men?
Well, exactly.
Because I know there are instances. Listen, I know young men that have had their bums grabbed by older women.
Yeah.
I know women, young men that have had some sort of what you would assume to be sexual assault, but in public by women that think they can take liberties with men because there's not that fear. But once it's a man doing it to a woman, because of these assumptions that it's obviously vitriolic and horrible and some sort of misogynistic violence, then that all of a sudden it's a problem.
Is intent a key part of this, in the sense that I can imagine someone wolf whistling in a very leering, unpleasant, quite intimidating manner, and being unpleasant with it, or I could imagine a bunch of cheeky young builders on a building site wolf whistling in a cheeky, non-threatening manner and thinking it's just a bit of fun,
isn't it? If you're attracted to the person wolf whistling at you, that's not harassment. If you find them unattractive and they look like a toad, that's suddenly harassment.
Look, there has to be an aesthetic bar for the wolf whistling.
That line, and the line obviously can't be whether or not they're attractive. The line has to be whether the behaviour is consistently threatening. So if someone's staring at you for a really long time, is following you around, and you feel scared, you should be able to, it is more than wolf whistling. Exactly, that is something that you should.
Right?
Yes.
If he wolf whistled at you, would you go to the Met Police and be like, oh, the horror?
Well, no, I wouldn't go to the police for anyone wolf whistling at me. But if they were like, stalking me,
I remember Cindy Crawford, the supermodel, told me when she was 21. She walked down Knightsbridge, dressed to the nines, high heels, looking fantastic, and the entire street stopped. Cars stopped, builders stopped, thousands came out. She was mobbed, right? And then I interviewed her when she was in mid-40s, and she went, I just walked down the same street and nobody batted an eyelid. And she said, what I'd give for a builder shouting at me now. And that was Cindy Crawford.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. You can be careful what you wish for. But listen, good debate. Nice to see you both. Thank you very much.